Hello, I'm Bernard Norcott-Mahany. I work at the Bluford branch of the Kansas City Public Library. In honor of April, National Poetry Month, and the Olympics, I have been reading poems by Pindar, who wrote epinician or victory odes for athletes in athletic contests in Greece, ancient Greece. We've looked at the Olympian, we've looked at the Nemean Games, we've looked at the Pythian Games, and now we're going to look, as we sort of conclude, we're going to look at the Isthmian Games. So the isthmus refers to the Isthmus of Corinth. Corinth, one of the main cities in Greece, is on this isthmus, which is this narrow bit of land between Attica, one big land mass of Greece, and the Peloponnese, which is southern Greece. So Corinth is in between, and the Corinthian Games, or the Isthmian Games, were held every 2 years, just like the Nemean Games. They were held a year after the Olympics, and then 3 years after the Olympics, or 1 year after the Olympics and 1 year before the next Olympics. So the poem we're going to look at today is Isthmia number 1. Probably is around 470 BCE for a man named Herodotus of Thebes. This is not the famous Herodotus of Halicarnassus, the historian. He was victor in a chariot race, and one of the things that's unusual in this particular winner is the horse race events. So the horse racing, the chariot racing, and even the mule car racing. Often the winner was the person who entered the event. It was not the person who competed in the event. So, for instance, Hieron of Syracuse, the famous tyrant of Syracuse, Olympia poem number 1 is to him for victory in the horse race. He didn't actually race his own horse. He had a jockey who raced that horse. And that was fairly typical. So you'd have a wealthy person or a royal person enter the event, but they weren't the people actually competing. In the case of Herodotus of Thebes, he actually drove his own chariot. So this was sort of unusual. In this poem, Pindar is going to speak of Heracles and his dealings with the dogs of Geryon. So one of his labors was to get the cattle of Geryon, but Geryon had these dogs, these wild dogs that Heracles had to deal with. Herodotus, because he drove his own chariot, here in this poem he is compared to Castor, right, of Castor and Polydeuces, and Iolaus, Heracles' cousin, who also apparently were famous as charioteers, as driving their own chariots. Heracles' brother Iphicles is also mentioned in this poem. So, without further ado, Isthmia poem 1 for Herodotus of Thebes, winner in the chariot race. Mother of mine, gold-shielded Thebe, I shall set your task above all occupation. Let not rocky Delos, in whom I have poured my heart, be angry with me. What do the good love more than honored parents? Give place, Apollo's island. With the gods' help, I shall join these two delights and fulfill them, as I sing of Phoebus and the long-haired god, with men of the sea in wave-girt Chios, and of the isthmus rock that breasts the foam. For from its games it has given 6 garlands to the host of Cadmus. A fine victory to our land. There did Alcmene bear her undaunted son, before whom Geryon's dogs once shuddered. But I fashioned for Herodotus a gift for his 4-horse chariot, and since he handled its reins with his own hands, I wish to fit him into a song fit for Castor or Iolaus. In Lacedaemon and Thebes they were born, strongest of heroes in the driving of chariots. In the games they put their hands to many encounters and made their home fine with tripods, with cauldrons and cups of gold. They relished the wreaths that victory brings. The light of their success is manifest in the naked foot races and in the running of warriors in clanging armor, when their hands aimed sharp spears and when they went among the stone quoits. There was no 5 events, but each exploit had an end of its own. Often, their hair bound with many garlands from these, they were seen near to the streams of Dirce and to Herodotus. Iphicles' son was born of the same breed as the sown men, and Tyndareus' son dwelt among the Achaeans on the high seat of Therapna. Hail to you! But I will deck a song for Poseidon and the holy Isthmus and the shore of Onchestus, and proclaim in the tale of this man's honors the glorious lot of his father Asopodorus, and his father's fields in Orchomenus, which welcomed him from the immeasurable sea when he was cast ashore by shipwreck and freezing misfortune. But now the destiny of his blood has set him again in the bright daylight of old. He who has suffered gains foresight with his mind. If he gives all his spirit to prowess, both with expensive money and with toil, to those who have found it we should pay a proud song of praise with ungrudging temper. For this is a light gift for a craftsman to make, in return for troubles of every kind, to speak a fair word and set up a fine sight for all to see. After action, different rewards delight different men. Sheep watcher, plowman, snarer of birds, and him whom the sea feeds. But every man strains in effort to keep nagging hunger away from his belly. But he who in games or in war wins delicate glory gets the highest gain in words of praise, the best that the tongues of townsmen and strangers can utter. We must raise a loud song for our neighbor, the earth-shaking son of Cronus, and thank him for helping our chariots, lord of the horse races. And your sons, Amphitryon, we must greet, in the home of Minyas, and Eleusis, the famous grove of Demeter, and Euboea in the circling running grounds. Protesilaus, with these I count your precinct among Achaean men at Philacca. For from telling everything that Hermes, god of the games, has given to Herodotus with his horses, I am stopped by the brief scope of my song. Truly what is kept in silence brings even larger delight. May it be his lot to be borne aloft on the shiny wings of the sweet-voiced Pierian maidens, and wreathe his hands with the choicest garland from Pytho and the Olympiads at Alpheus, as he fashions honor for seven-gated Thebes. But if anyone dispenses hidden wealth indoors and laughs when he falls on men unlike himself, he thinks not that he pays his life to death ingloriously. So, one last thing about this poem. In the poem, he makes reference to Delos early on. Apparently, the poem that he was supposed to be working on was a paean, was a hymn in praise of Apollo for the island of Delos for some festival. But he got this commission for Herodotus, and he decided he was going to get that done first. So he basically sort of excuses himself and says, sorry, Apollo, I'm working on that. I'll get it to you soon, which is sort of a strange take. All right, so tomorrow we will look at Isthmia poem number 2, which is a bit of a strange poem, and I'll explain why tomorrow.